Good morning, everyone, and a good Erev Shabbos Chanukah. We're continuing here in the laws of KASHRUS, and he writes like this: "Ba'avar, in the past, meaning in previous generations, Haylechol bayis kli tibul lemelech shesamim ala shulchan." They used to have like bowls that they would have salt in the bowl, and they would dip their foods in them on the table. Either they would dip the food right into the bowl, or they would take with their hands and sprinkle it on their food. And therefore the minhag was that every single person had two separate kelim, utensils for salt. Echad chalavi, one was for milk, ve'echad b'sarim, one was for the meat. Why? Because if you're dipping your piece of pizza into the bowl of salt, so you leave over some of the shamnunis, you leave over the residue of the fats, of the flavoring of the food, of the milchik into the bowl. If you take your hot dog and you dip it into a bowl of salt, why you would do such a thing, that's another question, salty enough as it is, but this is just an example. So then you're leaving over the flavor, the taste, some of the residue of the hot dog into the salt over there. So therefore they had two separate utensils for salt, always one for meat and one for milk. Kayom, however, today, today we have salt shakers, and we actually shake out and pour out the salt onto the food that we're eating. Not really concerned over here that remnants or residue of the food, whether the milk or the flesh, is going to end up getting into the salt, because it's pouring from little holes over there and you're pouring it over the food. So you're not dipping the food into the salt. Therefore, according to the halacha, you would not need two separate salt shakers, one for the milk, one for the meat, because there's nothing really to be concerned about in terms of meat and milk getting mixed together. Amnam, however, av hayoim, even today, the custom in most places is the yached shnei kelim. People still have two separate vessels. Echad b'sari, one is for the meat, v'echad chalav, and one is for the milk. That's the minhag, that is the custom in most places. They still have a salt shaker for the fleshik side and a salt shaker for the milchik side, just in case. And he brings that over here, efshar ashatam. Perhaps the reason is, mishum shechoshim shema yiga malicha b'maichel. Maybe the salt shaker will end up touching the food at the time base shazarim alav, that you're pouring it out onto the food. Sometimes you're pouring the salt into a boiling pot, let's say of soup, and then the vapors of the food, of the hot food, goes back inside the salt, which is inside of the shaker, and then maybe it's quite possible that you have fleshik salt or you have milchik salt that is there. And therefore, the custom is, if you can afford it, and the salt shaker is very cheap these days, better to have two salt shakers, one for milchik, one for fleshik. You'll avoid all issues and all problems altogether. And as he writes, that's the minhag, that is the custom in the majority of places in Klal Yisrael today. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.